Well, class, this is session 3 for week 3, September the 9th, week of September the 9th, according to your syllabus. In session 1, I spoke of the history of graduate school education. In session 2, I spoke of the knowledge explosion of the modern era. And this time we are scheduled to speak about why will we have a graduate school program at Asian Christian University. I want to talk about the goals of such a program and the objectives. Goals are a little bit more general. Objectives are slightly more specific. What are the expectations on the part of the student, and what may be some of the details of the program? Well, I'll have to confess up front, I'm not going to be able to talk about all the details of the master's programs. I have some information from my colleagues about that, but not enough to be able to present that at this time. But it was my privilege to be able to work with the faculty and staff of other members of the faculty, that is, at ACU, to help develop the Doctor of Ministry program, the DMin program. I have been able to maybe set forth a policy statement, goals and objectives statement. So I will share that with you and tell you what we are tentatively planning to do, the Lord willing, what we're tentatively planning to do. Now, I'm sure some of this information will be subject to revision and adaptation depending upon how we negotiate among ourselves what will be the criteria for entering into the program and what we hope to expect. But let me give you a broad idea of what we're discussing at this time, and perhaps the program will not change significantly if there are any changes at all. As I mentioned in the goals and objectives, the Doctor of Ministry program will be a professional terminal degree. It will emphasize the practical side of our ministry. I know it's difficult to distinguish between theory and practice, but some distinctions can be made, and although there are a great number of areas, there is a great number of areas of overlapping between the professional and the academic, nevertheless a distinction can be made. We want to talk about biblical norms that have to do with our daily lives, what we need to know to go to heaven and to teach others to do the same, and speak about the data that are necessary to understand the world in which we live, data from contemporary life that are relevant to our ministry today in the modern era. There is a difference between the DMin program as we normally think of it, especially here in the United States, and the Doctor of Philosophy program, a difference between the DMin program and the PhD program. The latter, the PhD program, generally places more emphasis on academic work, whereas the former, the DMin program, places more emphasis on professional efficiency, developing one's professional life as a minister. But you can see there's a lot of overlapping. There are many similarities, so the distinctions are not always made or not major. A DMin program is designed for personal enrichment and excellence in terms of what we learn at the continuing education level, especially at the advanced level. We need to understand that while sometimes there are some highbrows in certain schools who will look down upon the DMin degree, that's totally unnecessary. It's quite silly in my estimation. They simply don't know what they're talking about. Some haughty people sometimes will scoff at the DMin and will say it's not a legitimate doctorate. They are wrong. It is a legitimate doctor's degree. Now, I will admit there could possibly be DMin programs in some of the schools throughout my country, in some parts of my country, that are not up to par. They're not up to standards. And they may get by cutting corners, as we say, by taking shortcuts and not doing the kind of work you would expect at the doctoral level, and then just rubber stamping the students and giving approval to a number of them in kind of a degree mill. And that's an expression we use to refer to a school that does not maintain high standards of academic excellence, but will allow just about anybody to matriculate into the program and to pass through the program with a minimal amount of work, and sometimes even with very inferior work, with little learning taking place, and then giving a degree just to get them on out of the way to bring in new students. That's what we call a degree mill. There may be degree mills that are offering DMin programs, but we certainly don't want to develop such a degree mill with ACU, and we plan to have an intensive course of study. There is a difference usually between a school's offering of DMin courses and PhD courses. Often PhD programs will be slightly longer, but not that much longer. There's not a great difference in many cases. I have known of programs where the DMin programs are roughly comparable to the PhD programs, and we would hope to make that the case at ACUs. So it will run parallel, roughly speaking, with a number of PhD programs that are offered, especially in secular fields. This is one of the things I've noticed by perusing a large number of catalogs that are published by many different institutions of higher learning and that have been published over the years throughout my country. I've looked at programs in biology, studies in history, and studies in English, and studies also in theology. And I've come to see that as a rule, theological studies take more time to complete than their secular counterparts. Why that is, I think I've spoken about in the past and given my opinions that there's sort of an inferiority complex sometimes that some graduate students in theological studies have in comparison to their peers in other secular fields of study. That should not be the case, because the study of theology is not one whit behind the study of knowledge of, say, for example, natural science. In fact, I believe it's a more important study of knowledge, but because of the idea that the study of theology is less important than the study of natural science, for example, some have thought it was necessary to make theological studies much more rigorous and much more difficult in order to be able to save face and to be able to hold their heads up high and to say, yes, we too have advanced degrees in our field of study. I'm not sure if that's the reason why it has happened like that, but it has happened such that it seems that in many cases you can look at catalogs in secular universities and see the number of hours that are required and the kind of work that is expected to complete those secular degrees, those PhDs, for example, in biology, as a case in point, and compare that to what's required of most PhDs in religious studies, and you will see that the latter is usually a much more rigorous and much more lengthy program. But as a rule, returning back to my original point that matters most now, the DMin is comparable, roughly comparable to the PhD in many respects. We will require a number of classroom hours. We will require term papers. We will require a great deal of original research on your part. A lot of reading. Much more reading than you've done for each course in the past. That's just to be expected at the doctoral level. And of course, we will require at the end a dissertation. The major difference here in terms of comparing the PhD with the DMin is that the DMin also requires a special project. And I'll be talking about that more in a few minutes. Whereas the PhD is just a research degree. You go out and look at books and articles and do interviews and so on. But with the DMin, the dissertation is based upon a project, an act of ministry that is performed prior to the writing of the dissertation, and the dissertation incorporates findings from that project, from that act of ministry. So that is different, and you could even say that's even an additional requirement that's not expected of the PhD. The admissions policy we have envisioned will be that for you to get into the DMin program, you will have to have an MDiv or an MTH or its academic equivalent in some way. You have to have its academic equivalent. You will have to have a good grade point average of at least a B, at least the letter B. That's 3.0 on a scale of 1 to 4. And that will be at the graduate level, at the master's level. And that'll be required for you to get into the program. And that's just a basic requirement you'll find anywhere you go. Now, the degree requirements will consist of 36 units, 36 semester hours. We will assign 6 units to the project/dissertation, the project dissertation. Usually they're thought of as one act, the project dissertation. 3 units will also be assigned for each doctoral seminar. So instead of calling them classes we normally call at the doctoral level, we call the classes seminars. Now, the very first one, however, will generally be a doctoral introductory. It's not the introduction to graduate research course. This is a course for credit, but generally it's some sort of a DMS 810 we have labeled it to be, and I'll explain that in a few moments what that is. There will be a total of 11 seminars to complete the whole program, 11 courses to complete the whole DMN program. So it could possibly be done in a minimum of 2.5 years. But it may take a little longer, and we would expect it not to take longer than 5 years. So between 2.5 to 5 years on the average. You may take about 4 courses per year, 4 seminars per year, with the remaining 2 seminars to be for the last half year, 2 seminars per semester. Each seminar will generally convene for a 1-week period. That will be 5 days of intensive classroom study and experience, interaction with one another. You see, part of what is expected at the doctoral level is for you to learn nearly as much from your colleagues, your fellow students, as you do from the professor, the instructor. At the undergraduate level, usually the instructor is a talking head who just disseminates information. He just spills out information, and others sort of passively write it down. The students do. However, at this level, there's much more interaction and much more activity, and you will be participating. You may even be asked to teach the class on a given day for a period of time, for an hour or two, each of you in the seminar. That's generally expected of doctoral seminars. Generally speaking, an average of about 2,000 pages of reading will be required for each seminar, and that will have to be done before the seminar begins. Generally speaking, the reading is all to be finished before the seminar begins, and a student must also submit a term paper, a research project, a written research project. It has to do with the subject matter for that course. One of the courses that we will offer as a school will be the mandatory foundational course, and it will be for the rest of the program. It basically will be something like what we're talking about now, an introduction to the course of study itself, and even one that will expand upon the things that I'm talking about now. I would suggest that we offer 5 seminars in the area of doctrinal norms. Let me go back and to explain something I failed to mention adequately a few moments ago. The doctoral program, the DMN program, should consist of 2 major emphases. On the one hand are the doctrinal norms emphases, doctrinal norms from normativity, standard or norm. And the second will have to do with practical ministry, the other side, the practical side of ministry. So doctrine and practice, doctrinal norms and practical ministry. 5 seminars will be offered for each student in the area of doctrinal norms. Now, we may offer more seminars in those areas in the future, but you will expect it to take that many, and 5 seminars to be offered in the area of practical ministry. Each student will perform a special act of ministry, which we call the project, and that will be in connection with the dissertation that will be written based upon the project. Let me give an example of a project. You might sit down in a classroom setting at a church building with a number of undergraduate students and teach a course to them and monitor their progress very carefully. Teach the course and write about what's going on in the course in a detailed sort of way. What you include in the course, your curriculum, and at the same time you will also be talking about evaluations of the student's progress in the course. What is learned from the course? What is learned in the way you teach the course? Student input, what the students have contributed to the information of the course. And you can take that and use that maybe as the basis of your dissertation. That could be your act of ministry. Your act of ministry might be to interview a certain number of missionaries from a given area of the country, to ask a number of specific questions and to gather statistics about how many people, for example, obey the gospel in that area from preaching, or how many obey the gospel from personal work. How many Bible studies are generally conducted before there is a positive result, or something like that. That's just a way to influence your thinking. These are not hard, fast suggestions here. These are just some broad ideas for what you can do as an act of ministry that will allow you to be able to write your dissertation. We will have more to say about that later on. There will be at least two majors. You will major in either local church ministry, or you will major in foreign missions, local church ministry or foreign missions. There are a number of things that can be done for an act of ministry, as I just said. Do a scientific survey, conduct polls, look at techniques, maybe how biblical counseling is done, or engage in acts of counseling, and then write about it. You will also set forth a design proposal, and that will outline, your design proposal will outline your intentions and your plans for your project. This will be done at some point, hopefully early on in the program. But we realize that you won't know, perhaps, as you first begin exactly what you want to do. And some of that will become clearer as you study some of the seminars, as you get into those seminars. But as early as possible, you will have to develop a design proposal that you write. It's like a formal paper, and you will submit to the faculty at ACU what your intentions and your plans are, what you hope to accomplish in your active ministry. And then there will be interaction from the faculty. There will be suggestions made, maybe revisions, advice, corrections, new ideas, but you will interact with your faculty advisor or your faculty members and the rest of the staff also. Well, I've mentioned here in the preliminary paper that I turned in to the other faculty members that this design proposal, this paper called the design proposal, needs to be submitted to the faculty before the end of the first course. And the first course will be entitled Research Methods and Project Design. Research Methods and Project Design. That's what we have planned now, unless modifications are made to the program later on. So the project itself, as I said, will consist of a particular act of ministry as set forth in the approved design proposal. It could be in an area of preaching, in an area of personal evangelism, in an area of, or the area of missions, or in counseling, or in teaching. Again, either in preaching, evangelism, missions, counseling, or teaching. And then your project dissertation will be written upon the basis of that research that was done and your that was done in conjunction with your project. You did research before the project, during the project, and after the project, and that research will be incorporated into your dissertation. Well, let me mention some of the courses I have suggested that we offer. First is DMS 810. DMS 810, and that will be Research Methods and Project Design, which will be required of all students. Now, in my opinion, no hours of credit will necessarily have to be assigned for this preliminary course. All will be expected to take it, and it will just be getting you ready for the rest of the DMIN project. Then I have listed here 5 courses in practical ministry. The first is DMP, that's Delta Mexico Papa, DMP 815, Congregational Growth and Edification, for 3 hours credit. It's a doctoral seminar entitled Congregational Growth and Edification. And of course, just as the name implies, we will talk about ways to help the church where you preach, where you labor, to grow numerically and spiritually, and how to build up the members. The next course is DMP 920, Evangelism/Missions, also for 3 hours credit. The next is DMP 825, Marriage in the Family. Now, of course, that will be a counseling type of course, but not exclusively so. It will be helpful in a number of areas and for a number of students. And then the next course in practical ministry will be DMP 930, Practical Biblical Counseling. And the last of the 5 courses in practical ministry will be DMP 835, Advanced Homiletics, again for 3 hours credit. So, at this time, all the DMIN students are expected to take all the listed courses, plus the preliminary course. So as I mentioned these, you will be expected to take all of these courses that I'm talking about now, until or unless changes are made to the program. Then For the next category of courses, there will be 5 called doctrinal norms courses, courses in doctrinal norms. There will be DMB, B is in Bravo, Delta Mexico Bravo, DMB 845, Advanced Hermeneutics. Hermeneutics, the science of interpretation. 3 hours credit for that as well. Then there will be DMB 950, Advanced Introduction and Survey of the Old Testament, for 3 hours credit. And then DMB 855, Advanced Introduction and Survey of the New Testament, and DMB 960, Advanced Apologetics, for 3 hours credit, and DMB 865, Advanced Church History and Principles of the Restoration, for 3 hours credit. And the last course that all will, of course, take will be each individual project dissertation course. And that will be DMD, Delta Mexico Delta, DMD 965, the project dissertation, for 6 hours credit. Now, that one course is not where you meet. We don't get together as a seminar or as a group for that course. That's something you do basically on your own, in conjunction with your faculty advisor, who will help you, help coach you, help you maneuver through the obstacles of the course. Well, let me see. I can call several things that you'll be able to read on your own. I'll try to submit this information to you if the faculty, if the administration does not mind. Again, this is a work in progress. Some of this material will be changed to suit the exigencies of developments later on. You'll have to keep a grade point average of B or better. B or better, that's 3.0 on the scale from 1 to 4. And you really should not make any grade below C, 2.0 on the scale of 1 to 4. And if you did, it would not count toward finishing the degree. You'd have to take another course, take that course again, because basically you haven't passed it unless you make better than C, or at least a C. So your dissertation itself is going to usually consist of 3 major components. 1, a well-researched component having to do with biblical norms. That's the area of biblical studies, doctrine or theology. The second will be a component concerning the relevant data that come from contemporary life, the world in which we live, that I was speaking of in our last lecture. You'll look at statistics, trends, and philosophies of our time. And then finally, there will be a component concerning what you did in your active ministry. It will be a detailed description of your active ministry, or in other words, your project, the project itself, and what principles you discovered from your active ministry. You usually will submit your dissertation from anywhere from 6 to 12 months after you complete the project. So basically a year after the project is finished, we hope to have your dissertation finished and submitted to the faculty for review. Of course, you're going to have to adequately footnote this, and during the course of your other courses, and obviously at the master's degree level, for those of you who are just now entering into the master's program, you will be learning to do significant individual research on your own and to write term papers according to a standardized model. We're going to talk about that in future studies in this course, the Lord willing. So we'll get into that in more detail later about what is expected of a term paper. Generally, I would say that your dissertation should be anywhere from 100 to 150 pages in length, double-spaced. And you can include diagrams and charts, and often such graphics are involved in these types of programs describing your act of ministry. Well, that's basically an overview of the Doctor of Ministry program as we envision putting it into place at ACU, the Lord willing. Now, I know for those of you who are just now beginning your master's degree work, some of this may not be as relevant, but I'm trying to pique your interest in continuing with your master's level study in order to get to the point where you can matriculate into the DMin program. And I'm very excited that we have this DMin program. The Lord willing, we hope to get some men into the program and through the program in such a way that they will be well trained and ready to meet the demands of the modern world and to uphold the cause of Jesus Christ, sound doctrine, to maintain the purity of the church and the purity of the truth And I'll have much more to say about that in future lectures in this course, the Lord willing, to talk about the need for maintaining sound doctrine. And I'm going to try to admonish you and to exhort you as much as I do inform you about the nature of the graduate level research, in order to get you to see what our goals are, to have a sound, solid program that will allow you to honor God and to save fellow men by maintaining the truth and not deviating to the right or to the left. Well, thank you, brethren, for your patience with me.